I'm Lucian, 35, and literally last weekend, my rep as the family's financial glue, yeah, it totally backfired. The stability I'd worked my butt off to provide, it blew up into a full-on public humiliation at my father's retirement party. My dad and brother, the golden duo, demanded I stay in my lane, basically keep the checks coming without a seat at the table. When I pushed back, the room went dead silent. "You're not even family anymore," Dad barked, with every guest staring like I'd crashed their private club. But here's the tea. Their shade didn't break me. It lit a spark. I'm not just pushing back, I'm about to flip the script and change everything. A quick note. This story is copyrighted by the YouTube channel Brim Revenge. Reposting, revoicing, or editing this content without permission constitutes copyright infringement. Thank you for respecting original creative work. Now, back to the story. I'd driven 1,200 miles across 3 states, my old hatchback rattling like it held a grudge, to make it to Dad's retirement bash in upstate New York. I'd spent years bailing him and my brother Ethan out, mortgage payments, car loans, even Ethan's failed business ventures. My fingers gripped the steering wheel, nails digging into the cracked leather, as I rehearsed what I'd say. I wasn't just the bank, I was his daughter, damn it. The venue, a swanky lakeside lodge, glowed under string lights as I pulled up. I smoothed my dress, a navy number I'd splurged on to feel like I belonged, and tucked a generous check for Dad's retirement cruise into my purse. My heart thudded, not from nerves, but from hope. Maybe tonight he'd see me. I stepped inside, the air thick with laughter and clinking glasses. Ethan spotted me first, his smirk sharp enough to cut. "Lucian, you made it," he said, like I was late to my own execution. Dad stood by the bar, all charm in his tailored suit, shaking hands like a politician. I waved, but his eyes slid past me, landing on some cousin's +1. My stomach twisted. I'd driven through the night, fueled by gas station coffee and the fantasy of a real family moment. Instead, I got the usual, a quick nod, like I was staff. I clutched my purse tighter, the check inside feeling heavier. This wasn't just about money, it was about proving I was more than their ATM. But as I scanned the room, filled with faces I barely knew, I felt the first crack in that hope. Tonight wasn't going to be what I'd imagined. The lodge buzzed with chatter, but I felt like a ghost, weaving through clusters of relatives who barely acknowledged me. I leaned against a wooden beam, watching Ethan hold court, his laugh loud as he recounted his latest real estate win. Dad clapped his shoulder, beaming, while I stood there, invisible. It wasn't new. Growing up, my achievements were like whispers in a windstorm, overlooked, dismissed. I remember my high school graduation, straight A's, a scholarship to a top college. I'd run home, diploma in hand, expecting a hug. Instead, Dad glanced up from Ethan's football highlight reel and muttered, "That's nice, Lucian." Ethan got a steak dinner for throwing a ball. I got a pat on the head for earning my future. Then there was my first big break, a marketing campaign I'd designed at 25, landing a client that put my firm on the map. I'd called Dad, voice shaking with pride, only for him to pivot to Ethan's new condo purchase, all on his own. Ethan, who'd borrowed 10 grand from me for the down payment. I'd bite my lip, nod through the phone, my excitement curdling. At family dinners, they'd toast Ethan's predictable wins. Job promotions, a flashy engagement, while my late nights building a business were cute hobbies. My fingers curled into fists now, nails biting my palms as I watched Dad parade Ethan to another guest. "My son, the success story," he said, loud enough for me to hear. I wasn't jealous, not exactly, it was the erasure that stung. Years of my sweat, my sacrifices reduced to nothing. I'd paid for Ethan's car when his repo notice came, covered Dad's overdue bills when he forgot to ask. Yet here I was, clutching a purse with a check they didn't deserve, surrounded by people who saw me as a wallet, not a daughter. My throat tightened, but I swallowed it down. I'd learned early to keep my hurt quiet, to smile through the slights. But tonight, standing in that lodge, the weight of those years pressed harder. I scanned the room, catching my reflection in a window, tired eyes, tense jaw. I wasn't the kid begging for approval anymore. I'd built something they couldn't ignore, even if they didn't know it yet. My phone buzzed in my purse. A work email probably, but I ignored it. I wasn't ready to let go of this moment, this hope that maybe, just maybe, they'd finally see me. I slipped into a corner of the lodge, away from the clinking glasses and Ethan's booming voice, my fingers brushing the edge of my phone in my purse. The buzz from earlier wasn't just another email, it was a reminder of what I'd built in secret. 4 years ago, I'd been at my lowest, drained from bailing out Dad and Ethan, my own dreams buried under their demands. I'd sit up nights, staring at my laptop, the glow burning my eyes as I sketched out a business idea, a marketing platform for small businesses, something to empower the underdogs like me. It was my rebellion, my middle finger to being invisible. I'd poured every spare hour into it, coding, pitching, failing, then trying again. My apartment became a war zone of coffee cups and post-it notes. My savings dwindled to nothing, but I kept going. The aha moment came at 3 a.m. during a sleepless night, when I cracked the algorithm that made my platform click. Beta testers loved it. Then a small business in Chicago signed on, then 10 more, then 100. By last month my company was pulling in contracts I'd never dared dream of, all under the radar. I hadn't told Dad or Ethan, not out of fear but because I wanted one thing that was mine, untouched by their dismissal. My fingers tightened around my phone now, thinking of the email I'd ignored. It was probably my COO, prepping for the big deal we were about to close, a partnership that had put us in every major city. I'd done this without their approval, without their belief. Standing there, I felt a flicker of pride, but it was sharp, edged with hurt. I'd built an empire while they called me reliable Lucian, the one who'd always pay up. My jaw clenched as I watched Dad laugh with a guest, his hand on Ethan's shoulder. They didn't know the woman in the corner, the one who'd turned her pain into power. I wanted to march over, tell them everything, how I'd outgrown their box for me, but I didn't, not yet. I tucked my phone back in my purse, the check for Dad's cruise still there, a weight I wasn't sure I wanted to carry anymore. The party's noise swelled, but inside I was quiet, steadying myself. This wasn't just about my success, it was about choosing who I'd let define me. And as I stood there, I knew that choice was coming, faster than I'd expected. The lodge's lights dimmed as waiters cleared plates, and I stood near the bar, nursing a lukewarm soda, my purse heavy with that damn check. Tomorrow, I'd be back in Chicago, finalizing a deal that could make my company a household name, a partnership with a national chain, years of my blood and sweat about to pay off. But tonight, I was here, in this suffocating room, surrounded by relatives who saw me as an obligation, not a daughter. I'd almost skipped Dad's retirement party, but some stubborn part of me clung to the idea of family, of finally being seen. I adjusted my dress, smoothing a wrinkle, my fingers lingering on the fabric as if it could anchor me. Dad was across the room, laughing with Ethan, both of them in tailored suits, looking like they owned the place. I'd driven through a storm to get here, my car's wipers barely keeping up, my eyes gritty from no sleep. I'd told myself it was worth it, that maybe this time Dad would look at me with pride, not calculation. The check in my purse, 10 grand for his dream cruise, was my last attempt to buy that moment. Stupid maybe, but I wasn't ready to let go of hope. My phone buzzed again, probably my COO with deal updates, but I couldn't check it now. I needed to focus to get through this night. A cousin brushed past, muttering about the family-only toast later, and my stomach sank. I wasn't sure where I fit in that phrase anymore. I caught Ethan's eye, and he gave me that half smirk, like he knew something I didn't. My fingers tightened around my glass, the condensation slick against my palm. I'd spent years proving myself, to them, to myself, but standing here I felt like I was 16 again, begging for a seat at their table. The room felt smaller, the air thicker, as Dad called for everyone's attention. He raised a glass, his voice booming about legacy and family. I straightened, heart pounding, waiting for my name. It never came. Instead, he toasted Ethan, the future of our name. My chest tightened, and I set my glass down, the clink louder than I meant. Whatever happened next, I knew one thing. I wasn't invisible anymore, not to myself. The lodge's warm glow felt like a lie as I stood near the bar, my soda now flat, the check in my purse burning a hole. Dad's toast to Ethan still echoed, his words about family legacy slicing deeper than I'd expected. I scanned the room, hoping for a friendly face, but got only sidelong glances from cousins who'd never bothered to know me. Then Aunt Clara approached, her perfume sharp, her smile sharper. "Lucian, still doing that little marketing thing?" she asked, voice dripping with pity. I forced a nod. my fingers tightening around my purse strap, the leather creaking under my grip. "It's a business, Clara," I said, but she was already turning to compliment Ethan's new watch. Then came Uncle Mark, clapping my shoulder like I was a kid. "Heard you're still helping your dad out. Good girl," he said, not waiting for my response before joining the crowd around Ethan. Each word was a jab, each smile a reminder I was the help, not the hero. My jaw clenched, teeth grinding, as I caught Dad's eye across the room. He looked away, quick, like I was a stranger. My heart thudded, a mix of anger and ache. I'd driven across the country for this, for them, and they couldn't even pretend I mattered. A server bumped into me, mumbling an apology, and I stepped back, my heel catching on the rug. I steadied myself, but the room felt unsteady, like it was tilting against me. Ethan sauntered over, his grin all teeth. "You look tense, sis," he said, leaning close. "Don't embarrass Dad tonight, okay?" His words landed like a slap, and my breath caught, my fingers twitching toward the check in my purse. I wanted to shove it in his face, prove I was more than their backup plan. But I didn't. I stood taller, forcing a smile that felt like a mask. "Wouldn't dream of it," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside. He smirked and walked off, leaving me alone in the crowd. My phone buzzed again, insistent, but I ignored it. I wasn't ready to escape into work, not yet. I needed to face this gauntlet, to see how much more they'd take before I broke or fought back. The night was young, and their contempt was just getting started. The lodge's chatter hushed as Dad stepped onto a small platform, a microphone in hand, his suit pristine under the chandelier's glow. I stood near the back, my purse clutched tight, the check inside feeling like a brick. My heart pounded, a faint hope flickering that maybe now he'd acknowledge me. He cleared his throat, his voice warm as he thanked everyone for celebrating his retirement. "This is about family," he said, gesturing to Ethan, who stood beside him, chest puffed out. "Family only tonight." My stomach twisted, a cold realization creeping in. I scanned the room, cousins, aunts, uncles, all nodding like they belonged. I took a step forward, my heels clicking on the wood floor, expecting my name next. Instead, Dad's eyes skipped over me, landing on the crowd. "To my son Ethan, the heart of this family," he said, raising a glass. The room clapped, but I froze, my breath shallow. Ethan grinned, soaking it in, while I felt the air thicken, pressing against my chest. Then Dad's gaze finally found me, not with warmth, but with a hard edge. "Lucian, you weren't on the list," he said, loud enough for the mic to carry. "This is family only." The words hit like a punch, my face burning as every head turned. Whispers rippled, some shocked, some smug. My fingers dug into my purse, nails biting skin as I stood rooted, exposed. Ethan stepped closer, his voice low but sharp. "You should go, Lucian. Don't make a scene." My throat tightened, tears pricking, but I blinked them back. I wanted to scream, to throw the check at them, to demand why my money was family, but I wasn't. Instead, I lifted my chin, my voice steady despite the tremor inside. "I drove 1,200 miles for this," I said, loud enough for the nearest tables to hear. Dad's jaw tightened, but he turned away, dismissing me again. The room spun, faces blurring, as I realized this wasn't a mistake. It was deliberate. They'd never seen me. Not as a daughter, not as anything but a resource. My hand hovered over my purse, the check a symbol of my stupidity. I turned toward the door, my steps slow, deliberate, each one heavier than the last. I wasn't just leaving the party, I was leaving their game. The lodge's door was in sight, my heels echoing on the polished floor, when my phone buzzed so fiercely it nearly slipped from my purse. I paused, the sting of Dad's words, family only, still raw, my hand trembling as I pulled out the phone. The screen lit up with my co's name Sarah, and the words, "Urgent. Deal closed." My breath caught. The partnership we'd been chasing for months, the one that'd make my platform a national name, had just been signed. I stared at the message, my heart racing, as the room's whispers faded behind me. Sarah's next text followed. "They want you on a call now. This is huge, Lucian." I glanced back at the crowd, Dad and Ethan still basking in their toast, oblivious. I stepped outside, the cool night air hitting my face like a slap. My fingers fumbled as I dialed Sarah, my voice barely steady. "It's done?" I asked. "Signed, sealed, delivered," she said, her excitement crackling through the line. "They're calling you the next big thing." I laughed, a shaky sound, leaning against the lodge's brick wall. The deal was worth millions, a validation of every sleepless night, every dollar I didn't give to Dad or Ethan. I clutched my purse, the check inside now a cruel joke. I pulled it out, staring at the 10 grand I'd meant for Dad's cruise. My fingers twitched, ready to tear it, but I stopped. Back inside, the party's noise surged as I re-entered. Ethan spotted me, his brow furrowing. "Thought you left," he muttered, loud enough for nearby guests to turn. I held up my phone, my voice calm but sharp. "Just got a call. My company closed a deal bigger than anything you've ever touched." The room quieted, Borks pausing midair. Dad's eyes narrowed, but I didn't flinch. "I was going to give you this," I said, holding up the check, "but I'm done bankrolling your life." I ripped it in half, the sound slicing through the silence. Gasps followed and Ethan's face reddened. Dad stepped forward, his voice low. "You're making a mistake, Lucian." But I wasn't. For the first time, I saw them clearly. Small, grasping, irrelevant. I turned, my steps lighter, the weight of their rejection gone. The night air waited outside, and so did my future. The torn check lay in pieces on the lodge floor, and the silence in the room was deafening, every eye locked on me. Ethan's face twisted, his mouth opening to speak, but I cut him off, my voice steady, louder than I felt. "You don't get to rewrite this story," I said, pointing at the scraps. "For years I paid for your lives, Dad's house, your car, your ventures, and you call me a stranger?" My hands shook, but I kept them at my sides, refusing to hide. Dad stepped forward, his jaw tight, his eyes flicking to the crowd like he could salvage his image. "Lucian, this isn't the place," he hissed, but I saw the panic in his stance, the way his fingers gripped his glass too hard. Ethan snorted, crossing his arms. "You think one deal makes you better than us?" he said, loud enough for the room to hear. I laughed, sharp and cold, surprising even myself. "It's not one deal, Ethan. It's years of work you never bothered to notice." I turned to Dad, my voice softer but cutting. "You toasted family tonight, but you meant money. I'm done being your ATM." The crowd shifted, uneasy, some cousins avoiding my gaze, others whispering. I felt their stares like pinpricks, but they didn't matter, not anymore. I grabbed my purse, slinging it over my shoulder, and headed for the door. Ethan called after me, "You'll regret this," but his voice cracked, weak. I paused, glancing back one last time. Dad's face was stone, but his eyes betrayed him, shock, maybe even fear that I'd finally stopped playing their game. I pushed through the door, the night air crisp, my breath visible in the cold. My phone buzzed. Sarah again, probably with more deal details. But I didn't check it. I walked to my car, each step surer, the weight of their hypocrisy falling away. I'd spent years chasing their approval, but standing there, alone under the stars, I realized I didn't need it. The lodge's lights faded behind me, and for the first time in years I felt light, like I could breathe. I slid into my car, the engine sputtering to life, and drove off, leaving their world in the rearview. The highway stretched dark and quiet as I drove away from the lodge, my car's hum the only sound breaking the silence. My phone sat silent in the passenger seat. No new texts from Sarah, no calls from Dad or Ethan. I didn't expect them to chase me, not really, but the absence still stung, a dull ache in my chest. I pulled into a diner an hour later, its neon sign flickering, open 24/7. Inside, my best friend Mia and her partner Alex waited in a corner booth, their faces lighting up when they saw me. They'd driven up from Albany to meet me, no questions asked, when I'd texted them from the road. Mia slid over, patting the seat, her warm smile pulling me in like a lifeline. "You look like you need coffee," Alex said, pushing a mug toward me. I wrapped my hands around it, the warmth seeping into my palms, grounding me. Mia leaned forward, her eyes searching mine. "What happened, Lucian?" she asked, her voice soft but steady. I told them everything. The check, Dad's cold dismissal, Ethan's smirk, the deal that changed it all. My voice cracked when I got to the family-only line, and Mia reached for my hand, squeezing tight. "They don't deserve you," she said, her tone fierce, and Alex nodded, his jaw tight like he wanted to punch someone. We stayed for hours, the diner's fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, plates of fries and pie piling up. They didn't just listen, they celebrated me, toasting my deal with chipped coffee mugs, laughing about the look on Ethan's face when I tore the check. Mia recounted how I'd helped her start her bakery, how my platform had boosted her business. Alex called me a quiet legend. And I felt my shoulders relax, the knot in my chest loosening. These were my people, not the ones I'd left behind. As Mia hugged me goodbye, her arms tight around me, I realized this was what family felt like. Chosen, real, untransactional. I drove off, their laughter still in my head, the night less heavy than before. The diner's glow faded in my rearview as I drove toward my hotel, the night air cool through the cracked window. My phone lit up on the passenger seat. A string of texts from Ethan, then Dad, their names like weights in my gut. Ethan's first message was sharp. "You're selfish, Lucian, fix this." Dad's was colder. "Call me, we need to talk." I stared at the screen at a red light, my thumb hovering over the reply button, years of habit urging me to smooth things over. But my hand trembled, and I set the phone down, face down, its light snuffed out. I wasn't that person anymore. At the hotel, I sat on the stiff bed, the room's silence loud after the diner's warmth. My laptop glowed as I opened it, Sarah's email waiting, details of the deal, press releases, a schedule for tomorrow's calls. But Ethan's texts kept flashing in my mind, each one a hook trying to pull me back. Another buzz. "Ethan again, you owe us an apology." My jaw clenched, teeth grinding, as I pictured his smug face. I opened my contacts, my finger steady now, and blocked his number. Then Dad's. Then Aunt Clara's. Uncle Mark's. Every name tied to that lodge, that life. Each tap felt like cutting a thread, my chest lighter with every one. I leaned back, exhaling. The room's quiet, no longer heavy, but peaceful. I'd spent years answering their calls, fixing their messes, but no more. My boundaries weren't just lines, they were walls, built from every ignored achievement, every family-only slight. I typed a quick reply to Sarah. "Ready for tomorrow, let's make it big." My fingers didn't shake this time. I closed the laptop, the click final, and stood to unpack my bag. My dress from the party hung in the closet, a reminder of the hope I'd carried in. I folded it carefully, not out of sentiment, but because it was mine, not theirs. The check's torn pieces were still in my purse. I'd mail them back with the letter I was already drafting in my head. For the first time, I slept without their voices in my dreams. Morning light filtered through the hotel curtains, and I sat at the small desk, my laptop open, a half-empty coffee mug beside me. The letter I drafted last night was done, 2 pages handwritten addressed to Dad and Ethan. It wasn't angry, not anymore. It was clear, final. A declaration of my freedom. I sealed it with the torn check pieces, my hands steady as I taped the envelope shut. I'd mail it later, but now, my focus was forward. Sarah's email from last night glowed on my screen. Our deal was generating buzz, and I had a virtual meeting with the national chain's CEO in an hour. My platform wasn't just a business. It was my legacy, one I'd built without their shadows. I opened my company's dashboard, watching real-time stats of small businesses thriving because of my work. A bakery in Seattle, a bookstore in Atlanta. People like Mia building dreams I'd helped make real. My chest swelled, not with pride but purpose. I wasn't just reclaiming my name, I was redefining it. I'd spent years letting Dad and Ethan's dismissal dim my light, but no more. My fingers danced across the keyboard, drafting a press release that didn't just announce the deal but told my story. A woman who turned rejection into revolution. I pictured Dad reading it, Ethan's scowl, and felt nothing but calm. I stood, stretching, my reflection in the mirror showing a woman I hadn't seen in years, eyes bright, shoulders square. I wasn't their reliable Lucian anymore. I was Lucian, period. Founder, innovator, someone who mattered. The meeting went flawlessly, the CEO's handshake through the screen sealing a future I'd earned. Afterward, I called Mia, her voice a warm anchor as I shared the news. "You're unstoppable," she said, and I believed her. I hung up, slipped the letter into my bag for the post office, and stepped into the day, my name no longer theirs to define. The hotel room was quiet, save for the soft hum of the air conditioner, as I sat on the bed, my packed bag ready for the drive back to Chicago. The letter to Dad and Ethan, sealed with the torn check, was mailed hours ago. A weight lifted with each mile it traveled away from me. I leaned back against the headboard, my phone dark. No notifications, no regrets. Outside, the world moved on, cars humming past, but inside, I felt still, grounded. I'd spent years chasing a family that didn't want me, tying my worth to their approval. Now, staring at the ceiling, I saw it clearly. My value wasn't in their eyes, but in mine. I thought of the deal, the businesses thriving on my platform, the life I'd built from scratch. My fingers traced the edge of my laptop, its worn keys a map of my fight. I wasn't just free from Dad and Ethan, I was free from the version of me who needed them. A memory flickered, me at 10, sitting at Dad's table, hoping he'd notice my drawing. He hadn't. But today I noticed me. My heart slowed, a steady rhythm, and I exhaled, the last of their hold slipping away. Peace wasn't loud. It was this, a quiet certainty that I was enough. I stood, grabbing my bag, ready to leave this chapter behind. The road ahead was mine, not theirs, and it felt like a gift I'd given myself. So here's the real question. Have you ever had to cut ties to find yourself? I walked away from a family that saw me as a transaction, and I found peace in knowing my worth doesn't need their stamp. Maybe you've got a story like that, someone who tried to dim your light, or a moment you took it back. Drop it in the comments. I'm reading every one. Did I go too far tearing that check, or not far enough? Let me know below, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories about breaking free and building your own path. You're not just watching, you're part of this journey. Keep shining because no one gets to define you but you.